What happens when you mix a director screaming, "Stop enjoying the movie," at his own crew, a leading man battling severe withdrawal, and a script that broke every rule in the book? You get Blazing Saddles. From punching horses to breaking the fourth wall, this production was teetering on disaster from day one. Here is the crazy but true story of how Hollywood's most offensive masterpiece, the film studios tried to bury, actually got made. The method acting that almost killed the movie. Gene Wilder wasn't supposed to be the Waco Kid. That role originally went to Oscar winner Gig Young, whom Mel Brooks cast specifically because he wanted a real alcoholic with a weathered face for the part. On the very first day of shooting, during the famous jail cell introduction, Young began shaking violently and vomiting while hanging upside down from his bunk. Brooks initially cheered, thinking it was brilliant method acting, until he realized Young was actually collapsing from severe alcohol withdrawal. With production in chaos, Brooks made a desperate weekend phone call to Wilder, the same actor he had previously rejected for being too young and too healthy, begging him to take the part he had originally wanted. Wilder flew cross-country immediately, stepped onto the set that Monday, and saved the film. Stop enjoying the movie. We're still making it! Mel Brooks famously screamed this at his own crew because camera operators were physically shaking with laughter and ruining takes throughout the production of Blazing Saddles. The chaos made it into the final film. Cleveland Little's laughter during the common clay scene was a genuine break of character caused by Gene Wilder's improvisation. The script was undeniable. Even John Wayne, who declined the role of the Waco Kid because the movie was too dirty for his image, admitted he laughed his head off reading it and promised to be front row on opening night. But in a cast of comedy giants, the real diva was the stunt horse that Mongo punches out. It had a luxury air-conditioned trailer that Gene Wilder joked was nicer than his own, a perk Mel Brooks defended by simply stating, "He's a star." The silence that almost killed the film. When studio executives first screened Blazing Saddles, they sat in dead silence, horrified by the racial satire and vulgarity, and planned to bury the movie in a vault forever. Mel Brooks saved it by demanding a test screening with a real audience, where the tension finally broke during the infamous campfire scene. Once the fart joke started, the crowd erupted in laughter so violent it proved the offensive movie was actually a masterpiece. Brooks had fought for every single one of those moments, famously throwing the studio's censorship notes in the trash because he believed that if you take away the edge, you take away the point, refusing to dull the blade of his satire even when threatened that he'd never work again. The Hedy Lamarr lawsuit. The running gag about the villain's name, it's Hedley, wasn't just a joke. It became a real legal battle. The actual actress Hedy Lamarr sued Mel Brooks for $100,000, claiming the character Hedy Lamarr infringed on her privacy and exploited her name. Brooks didn't fight it. He said he was flattered by the attention, and the studio settled out of court for a small sum. The irony? Brooks even warned her in the script itself. In the movie, his character, the governor, tells Hedley, "This is 1874. You'll be able to sue her." The explosion that almost wasn't acting. In one of the film's wildest action beats, a dynamite charge sends a fake toll booth flying into the air. On screen, it looks like classic slapstick, but behind the scenes, reports say it was terrifyingly close to a disaster. The explosion was rigged to fire after the actors had safely cleared the blast zone, but on the day of shooting, something allegedly went wrong. The charge detonated early. A misfire sent debris raining down just seconds after the cast had moved out of frame. Everyone froze. No one was hurt, but it was close. Too close. After that incident, Mel Brooks reportedly banned all non-essential crew from standing anywhere near the set during explosive scenes. And yet, he kept the shot in the final cut, because in Blazing Saddles, even a near-death experience could be played for laughs. The movie that died with the 70s. Mel Brooks has said it more than once, and with a straight face. I couldn't make Blazing Saddles today. Not with that script, not with those jokes, and certainly not with that ending. He argues that the political climate has shifted so drastically that studios wouldn't touch the project, calling political correctness the death of comedy because it forces artists to walk on eggshells. But Brooks isn't bitter about it. He sees the film as a perfect product of its time, a necessary explosion that used racial slurs not to be racist, but to expose the stupidity of bigotry with a sledgehammer. As Brooks famously put it, Comedy is supposed to be the lecherous little elf whispering in the king's ear, always telling the truth. And Blazing Saddles didn't just whisper the truth, it screamed it. In his view, the film walked a razor's edge that simply no longer exists, proving that sometimes you only get one shot to pull off the impossible. The punch that fooled the world. It looked like a cartoon, but when Mongo walked up to a horse and decked it, the audience gasped because it looked so vividly real. There was no CGI, no quick cuts, and no editing tricks. Alex Karras swung his fist, and the horse dropped instantly. The stunt was so convincing that animal rights activists were furious, sending angry letters because they were certain Karras had actually knocked the animal out cold. But the truth? It was a perfectly timed magic trick. Karras never touched the animal. He swung at the air, and a highly trained stunt horse fell on a specific command from its trainer, just like it was trained to do for old Western shootouts. It was a safe stunt, but the impact was undeniable. In that single moment, audiences realized that in Blazing Saddles, absolutely nothing was off-limits. Frankie Laine didn't know it was a comedy. The movie's theme song sounds like a genuine gritty Western ballad because the singer, Frankie Laine, had no idea he was singing for a spoof. Laine was a legendary singer of Western themes, like Rawhide and 3:10 to Yuma, and Mel Brooks hired him to give the opening legitimate weight. Brooks never told him the movie was a comedy. Laine sang his heart out, thinking it was a serious drama about a sheriff in danger, which is why the opening credits feel so epic compared to the insanity that follows. The leading man the studio was too scared to hire. Before the cameras rolled, Richard Pryor was already shaping the soul of Blazing Saddles. Mel Brooks brought him in to write the script, and Pryor went straight for the throat, adding the danger and racial bite that defined the movie. Brooks didn't just want his words, though. He fought desperately to cast Pryor as Sheriff Bart. But the studio execs were terrified. They didn't see a comedy genius. They saw a liability with a drug arrest record who they refused to insure. They forced Brooks to drop him, and the role went to Cleavon Little. Little was smooth and brilliant, but the movie's fearless DNA? That was all Richard. He even wrote some of the film's most surprising lines for other characters, including Mongo's famous philosophical confession, "Mongo only pawn in game of life." Pryor didn't wear the badge on screen, but Blazing Saddles ran on his voice from start to finish. If any of these facts surprised you, give that subscribe button a click. It helps the channel produce more great videos. The governor's name has a dirty meaning. Mel Brooks played the governor, William J. Le Pétoman, but the name wasn't random. It was a historical deep cut to a French performer named Joseph Pujol, who went by the stage name Le Pétoman. His talent? He was a flatulist, a professional farter who performed at the Moulin Rouge in the 1890s. So the governor's name literally translates to the fartomaniac, a joke hidden in plain sight for history buffs. The tragedy behind the laughs. The movie's secret weapon was Gene Wilder, who agreed to take the role only on the condition that he wouldn't play it for laughs, but instead portray the Waco Kid with drunken dignity and sadness. This quiet, tragic performance grounded the film's chaos, contrasting perfectly with Cleavon Little, who faced real-life racism and hate mail while playing a character who effortlessly outsmarted bigots. Together they created a dynamic where Wilder's deadpan sorrow and Little's cool grace allowed the film to punch through the screen, proving that the best way to destroy prejudice was to stare it down and laugh. The award show snub and the sitcom disaster. Blazing Saddles was a box office smash and a cultural earthquake, earning 3 Academy Award nominations, including Best Supporting Actress for Madeline Kahn. Yet, on Oscar night, it walked away with 0 wins. While audiences worshiped the film, the Academy seemingly wasn't ready to hand a golden statue to a movie built on fart jokes and racial satire. But the real insult came later, when the studio tried to turn this lightning-in-a-bottle masterpiece into a network TV sitcom called Black Bart. It was a cleaned-up, censored attempt to cash in on the brand, featuring the same characters but none of the edge, none of the soul, and none of the original cast. It failed so spectacularly that the pilot was buried, proving that while you can copy a premise, you can't duplicate a revolution. Madeline Kahn's Legs audition. When Madeline Kahn auditioned for the Lily von Stupp role, a parody of Marlene Dietrich, Mel Brooks made a strange request. He asked her to lift her skirt so he could see her legs. Kahn hesitated, asking, "Oh, it's that kind of audition?" Brooks quickly explained he wasn't being a creep. He needed to know if she had legs like Dietrich because she would need to straddle a chair in the scene. Kahn agreed, but with one condition: no touching. She lifted her skirt. Brooks saw the legs were perfect, and she got the role. Why did they leave the movie? When Mel Brooks screened the final cut of Blazing Saddles, one studio executive reportedly sat through the chaotic ending in stunned silence. When the lights came up, he had just one confused question for the director: why did they leave the movie? Brooks just stared at him and delivered the perfect answer: because it's over. The executive didn't get it, but Brooks knew exactly what he was doing. The ending, where the characters literally ride off the film set, crash through the studio commissary, and drive away in a limousine, wasn't just a gag. It was a statement. Brooks wanted to break everything: the Western genre, the story structure, and the fourth wall itself. He refused to cut the scene or explain it further because he knew if you had to ask why the characters were leaving the movie, you probably weren't ready for Blazing Saddles in the first place. The fourth wall, desert cameo. The scene where the camera pans across the desert to reveal the Count Basie Orchestra playing April in Paris, Live in the Sand, wasn't a green screen or a post-production trick. Brooks actually drove the entire legendary jazz orchestra out into the middle of the high desert to film the shot. The band members were sitting in full tuxedos on the dirt, under the blazing sun, playing the track live while the actors rode past them. It remains one of the most surreal and expensive visual gags in the film. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, click the subscribe button for more facts about your favorite movies.